What is going on in Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, we're about to find out.
President Trump or President Biden? Better president for this moment?
If you're in Ukraine, you want Trump right now.
I know. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. This is kind of a special show. It's a little different format than what we're doing. We actually have a number of interviews throughout talking about the war between Russia and Ukraine. It's a war. It's a war. Yeah. We have Blake Purcell. We have Pastor Sansanich, who's in Ukraine, coming up. And then we have Peter Hitchens coming up on this show to kind of talk about all things Ukraine and Russia, because it really matters to what's going on, not just to Ukraine and not just to Russia, but to us.
Yeah. Like and share this show now, because I think this is going to be, you're going to hear from people actually on the ground there. You're going to be hearing from people who have spent a lot of time there,
who were there, the establishment of Ukraine.
Yeah. So
and I'm wearing a hoodie today. Yeah. Okay, I'm wearing a hoodie because Pastor Jacob Rayom from Canada sent me this hoodie. Trinity Bible Church in Canada.
He just sent you a hoodie.
They've been just me. Thank you, Thank you,
I
Pastor.
see how it is, Jacob.
Yep.
Pastor Jacob, come on now.
And it's a military church hoodie.
Yeah,
because we are the militant church.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. And if you guys want to join us on our Cross Politic Liberty Tour, we're going to be in Fort Worth. We're going to be in Rapid City, and we're going to be in Phoenix.
Is that a Baptist hoodie?
Is it a Baptist hoodie?
Not anymore.
No, it's Presbyterian. Yeah.
Just baptize that thing.
They just baptized.
And how can people find out about the Liberty Tour?
Go to FLF or crosspolitic.com/Liberty Tour. Crosspolitic.com/Liberty Tour.
Three cities this spring.
Yeah, that's
special guests talking about freedom.
In Fort Worth, there's literally like 10 tickets left in Fort Worth. So it's pretty much sold out. So, try to head to us in Rapid City with Larry Elder. Yeah. And then in Phoenix, we got some special guests we're working on for May 19th in Phoenix.
Wow. Do you love classical Christian education but feel a bit overwhelmed trying to homeschool your high schooler? Does your child need more engagement and one-on-one attention? Then I'm glad you think that this ad is just for
I'm
you.
sorry, this wasn't for me.
Then consider Oak Hill Christian School's new campus in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Ooh.
It's also where Pastor Virgil Hurt is a pastor.
That's right.
Our unique 3-day hybrid high school program is the perfect blend of classical rigor and a family-focused Christian environment. To learn more, visit the website at Oak Hill 12. That's Oak Hill, the numbers 12.com. That's Oak Hill 12.
Like the apostles. Like 12 apostles.
Yes. Oak Hill K12.com. You got to miss that K.
Oh, it says
Oak Hill K.
Oak Hill. I didn't see that.
Oak Hill K.
you.
As in K through 12. Oak Hill K12.com.
All right.
There we go.
You should have read that. Oak Hill K.
It's the hoodie.
12.com. Hey, with us right now on the line, we're very grateful to have Pastor Blake Purcell. Blake and his wife Kathy moved with their 3 children to Leningrad in 1990 and became some of the first evangelical missionaries allowed to live in the Soviet Union post the Communist Revolution of 1917.
Wow.
He's the founder of HopeRussia. Blake, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
Okay, we got audio. We don't see you.
We don't.
Did the video go off?
Are you in America or Russia right now?
I'm sorry. I didn't take the call. Here I am.
Hey, Pastor Blake, thanks for joining us on Cross Politic.
Yes. Well, we're in the middle of Russia-Ukraine situation ourselves. We have a son there. I have 4 grandchildren that are American citizens. He's married to a Russian, and she can't get a visa to America in case they have to leave. So that was my other. We have 6 kids, and my oldest was just calling me because she's working with governors and mayors and others trying to get her, and senators and congressmen trying to get her a visa to be able to get out of Russia if she needs to.
Well, I don't know if they know this, but the Mexican border is wide open. If they can fly into Mexico, they can just
plus $450,000 in cash.
Yeah, they can
we
just come.
We mentioned that, and there's quite a few Russians that have walked across the border. So
not even joking.
Let me back up and say, we moved to the Soviet Union and lived there as our only place of residence, really. Officially from 1990 to 2015.
Wow.
We are now traveling there, but based here in Fort Worth. So we have 25 years of on the ground there, and then, of course, another 7 years of being there quite a bit. I just got back 3 weeks ago, and I'm supposed to go back, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, in just a few weeks as we continue to train pastors there.
Wow. So Blake, tell us what, from your perspective, what has just happened? Putin has invaded Ukraine. Why did this happen? What's going on?
Well, I'll break I'll break the most basic way I can, and that is to what comes to my mind is John 10:10. The thief comes to rob and kill and destroy, but I've come that they might have life and might have it abundantly. So anytime there's an aggressive war where you just have one power attacking another, not in any kind of defense, but just to take control of them, it's satanic. So I think what's happening is that the leaders of Russia simply enjoy abusing and brutalizing other nations and other peoples. That's what's happening.
Wow.
So that seems, in my mind, a little simplistic, just given kind of the history of Ukraine and Russia.
I mean, Gabe's from Texas, so can you, Now,
of course, that's sort of behind the scenes spiritually what's going on.
Okay.
Much more in a much more nuanced world in our human existence, a nuanced world, I would say, is that if you have the Soviet Union mentality, which 40% of the Russian people do, according to today's polls, which who knows if they're accurate, that is that Russia has the right to dominate their neighbors if there's any threat whatsoever. And so they claim the right, and I think sadly it's probably true of the Baltics as well, to simply disarm the Baltics if the Baltics and Ukraine are arming and are politically and emotionally and culturally not aligning with Russia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the bad blood, Russia likes to say that they're one nation, but in the 1920s, Stalin organized a intentional famine there, which killed a few million people.
Wow.
And when the Germans rolled through in 1940 or 41, when they rolled through, the Ukrainians welcomed them as liberators. That's how badly the Ukrainians were experiencing the Soviet Union.
Wow.
So
Hitler was a liberator.
Right.
Wow.
And Nazis as liberators. So it's much more complicated. They have their own language. If you speak Russian, you think you can understand Ukrainian, but the reality is when they're one paragraph in or three sentences in, you realize it's a separate language. There's a lot of key words, but you cannot understand the language overall.
So what do you think of Biden's response to Russia's invasion in Ukraine?
Well, again, nuanced. I have to say, in light of the horrendous job that we did pulling out of Afghanistan, the intelligence they were giving us that they were definitely going to invade, I looked at it as the boy calling wolf, that it didn't seem like it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden it did. So I would give high marks on good intelligence. I'm not big into criticizing, our national leader in the middle of a crisis, and because none of us know all the facts. The facts are, I'm 63. I would not want to be president when I'm as old as he is. Mm-hmm. So he's just not a commanding presence, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Putin is a commanding presence, no matter what. I mean, that's just the way he is. Right. So. I would chalk it up to age, and so I'm not.
What about the sanctions? What about the sanctions? And is that being effective? Or it seems like to me, on my perspective, it's a slap on the hand. And Putin's like, I can run my ROI on this. These sanctions are going to hurt a little, but I'm going to make more money or more power out of all this.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I mean, some of these things are not going to slow them down at all. I do think that Europe is kicking in more. Germany and France had just heard. France is sending major weapons, and Germany. What Germany and Europe need to do is get off of their natural gas, using their natural gas. Germany and Europe use 35 to 40% of their natural gas comes from Russia.
Right.
So they should never have gotten in that situation. why, and which adds to the fact that, or enlightens us to the fact that it's ridiculous that we shut off the pipeline coming from Canada ourselves.
Yeah.
Blake, Putin has been claiming that this is all about Ukraine being welcomed or discussed joining NATO.
Yeah.
And Putin says that he's appealing to agreements, treaties, I don't know, or just the threat of NATO. Does he have any argument at all, or is it really purely just this satanic aggression that you're describing? Does he have any kind of treaty appeal, NATO appeal that has a semblance of viability?
Well, okay, two things. One is to drop back to the Soviet Union. I was in 1989 in College Station, Texas, where a top Soviet official came and spoke, and he said that the Soviet officials knew all along that the West, after Germany's demise, the West was never going to be aggressive and wage a first strike, in kind of a first strike war against the Soviet Union. It was all propaganda to keep their people in fear of the outside world and to keep them appreciative of the Soviet leaders. So basically, this cannot go on the air in Russia, but you essentially have a criminal. The way the government is run is they make up laws and then they do whatever they want to do. And I realize we do that too. We can all laugh about that. Yeah. But that's the case. So I would say, in the big picture, no, he's not really afraid of NATO. It's not really about NATO.
Okay.
But on the small picture, you could say, when the United States, when the Soviet Union was falling apart, one of the ways that Reagan and Bush Sr. Tried to talk the Soviet leaders into letting the Soviet Union fall apart and letting go of Eastern Europe was to say, and we will not have NATO move closer to you. But that did not include, this is my take and my memory, I'm not a walking encyclopedia. That did not include any engagement with the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or Poland, or Romania, or whoever else wants to join NATO.
Yeah.
So it was just a unilateral. It was just the United States president saying they won't join NATO. That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
So it was not a legally binding pronouncement. Certainly, it does bother them that that everybody wants to join NATO, but then they should look at themselves in the mirror and go, "Hey, why is everybody afraid of us?"
Right. Right. So
why does everybody want to join NATO? Yeah. Their immediate neighbors: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Ukraine, and then behind them Poland, and who else is joining? Czechoslovakia, maybe or Slovakia and Czech Republic. So they apparently aren't very good neighbors.
So we got a couple CREC churches, a number of them in Russia and a number of them in Ukraine. And right. And you obviously know all the players involved and all the pastors involved, and how do you counsel, or how are you talking with the pastors in Russia and the pastors in Ukraine, and how are you helping them sort through where their countries are at war with each other?
Right. Well, it's a good question. We all woke up. I believe it was yesterday morning. I'm already losing time, but I think it was yesterday morning. We realized we were at war. And or we were at war, that they were at war. And so the Russian pastors, and I'm sure the Ukrainian pastors even more, were shocked and grieved. And so we had, this was Thursday.
Okay.
Oh, today's Friday. Okay, yes. So the Russian pastors, we were getting together for an online Zoom class anyway, discussing and reading Athanasius on the incarnation of the Word of God, which became sort of irrelevant. And so for the first hour, we spent praying for the Ukraine and the Russian pastors acknowledged this was an immoral and illegal act on Russia's part. Wow. Then soon after that, I got a notice that the seminaries we're connected with CREC churches and PCA churches.
Right.
There were two PCA connected churches, seminaries in Ukraine asking us to sign on a declaration of condemnation of this action and unconditional affirmation of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian believers. So just now, right before this call, I sent our seminary board's unanimous consent to sign on to that. So that'll be something public. And then the Russian pastors yesterday, 8 of them, we have about 25 in our movement, but 8 of them made a statement that I can send you, which essentially said the same thing. It's a lot shorter, but said the same thing, that this is immoral and that we are protesting this to the world, and we are praying for the Ukrainians to morally. I told them this, that often God teaches whole nations through other nations.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, when we moved to the Soviet Union, ambulance drivers did not. If you were hit on the street, you would not really be taken care of. You were just kind of on your own. And if you're dead or knocked out by a car, that's just tough. Well, now they have ambulances that actually care about people. Well, how did they learn that? They learned that from watching TV shows from the outside world and from seeing how Europeans behave. So learning to put up with a democracy takes a lot of self-control, and you have to be calm and give people the right to disagree with you, but disagree peacefully. So that is God's gift to Russia, and that's what Ukraine is doing for them, and that's why the Russian government hates that, because they hate that free speech. We just had a Russian there in Kiev only about a year ago, and she said for the first time in her life she saw peaceful demonstrations, and you could demonstrate anywhere, anytime you wanted to, and they were just a bunch of little peaceful demonstrations here and there about everything, kind of like in front of the White House. So that was a cultural shock to her, and Russia doesn't have it. Right. So every time you go out, even now, the demonstrators, the few thousand in St. Petersburg, where we live part of the time, they are subject to arrest and are even being threatened with being accused of treason for being against the war.
Oh,
now that is fascinating. That is fascinating. So, are you saying?
Sounds like Canada now.
There's a couple of. I want you to take this question and hold it in your pocket, because when I get done talking, you can answer this question too. But I want to know kind of what the conversation is that no one's having that we need to be having. I really want to know an answer to that. But if I can summarize what you just said, are you saying that part of what Russia is seeing in Ukraine is what liberty looks like, and it might be a little more contagious than what they probably want it to be, and they want to
a little more humanizing?
Well, that's what I mean by liberty. That they want to suppress that because that spreads. Is that part of what's happening in Ukraine? Is is
that the real threat to Russia?
Yeah.
Yeah, morally. Oh, yeah, morally, that's by far the threat. And and everything that comes with Western freedom. So you also have gay rights that they absolutely laugh at, and transgender rights that they think are demonic. Yeah. So they hype that up. I've even had both. The problem also in Ukraine is it's also a very corrupt society. The government is corrupt, business is corrupt. So they are just as corrupt as Russia is, but they have freedoms and they have liberties. So it's corruption in an environment of civil rights, whereas Russia's corruption in an environment of very, very few civil rights.
So what's the conversation then that you see as you're watching the news? You've been over there for years. You know people on the ground. You've been on the ground. What's the conversation that you see that's happening that the conversation that's not happening that should be happening?
Well, here's my missions. Here's my missions perspective. That is, you have 40% of the people in Russia who think they have the right to crush their neighbors if they disagree with them.
Yep.
And so, like in Afghanistan and Iraq, you can't just import democracy, because when people disagree with you in pre-Christian societies, your reaction is to either beat them or to kill them. And so that is 40% of the population of Russia right now. That they're it just takes the slightest foundation in truth to justify a full-fledged what do you call it, attack on the country. And so you just can't imagine how we would maybe say primitive, but an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I mean, if anybody just even threatens to take your eye, you have the right to knock their eye out, to gouge their eye out. So only the gospel can deal with the hearts of men. And Isaiah 2 and Micah 4 say that. And that we have to get used to long-term missions to strategic and unpopular places. So missions. Ukraine's always been popular. They love America. Yeah. Russia's always been unpopular because officially, and about 40% of the population, hates the idea of absolute, or not absolute freedom, but the kinds of freedom the Western democracies have.
Okay.
So only the gospel. In those passages, it says that the mountain of the house of the Lord will become the greatest of the mountains, and then the law will come forth from that mountain, from the church. And so the hope for the world, long term, for us to beat our spears into pruning hooks, is the gospel of Christ through the church. That's the hope.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
And so, but you have to be committed long term to unpleasant, unpopular places, because they're the game changers. They're the main opposition to the gospel on the face of the earth right now. It's right. Islam, Russia, and China, essentially, as far as I know.
And this is why, this is why the West is beginning to creep into the same kind of thing. You jokingly a minute ago just mentioned Trudeau, but we have protests. We used to be able to do peaceful protests in the West, and now
in Canada,
Trudeau, send his horses in to trample you.
Yeah.
Or your city council member will have the police arrest you.
Not nearly as bad as Russia yet, but when you begin to turn your back on Christ and you reject the gospel, then you go back to primitivism. You go back to the eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And if I don't agree with it, it's a direct assault on my person, and I can crush you. That's what's happening around us because we've rejected Christ.
Blake, I want to say thank you for joining us, man. And we're praying for your people over there as well.
And for you and your family.
For you and your family. This is crazy. So if you can just keep us posted to it, anything that happens over there, we can announce here and try and keep the lines of communication.
What's your website, man? What's your website?
Okay, HopeRussia.org. And we have 25 churches that are reforming across 9 time zones with 3,000 members. Yeah. So our churches that we're working in are from Vladivostok all the way to Riga on the Baltic. So that's 9.
Wow.
So pray for us, because we got great momentum. We're exponentially growing our movement, but of course, if they cut out Americans being able to get into Russia and things like that, there could be a real detriment to us. So,
thank you, Blake. More Cross Politic coming up next.
Okay.
Hi everyone, this is Garrison Hardy with Cross Politic. I hope you're enjoying the show. We're able to bring you this coverage thanks to our sponsors. Christians need to start thinking about doing business with fellow Christians. So, are you a developer, architect, or project owner? If so, I have a Christian commercial construction company you should be partnering with. Bobo Construction Incorporated is a 4th-generation family-owned general contractor that was founded back in 1952. Their motto is, whatever is fair and right, that's what we do. The Bobo Construction, Inc. headquarters is in Sacramento County, California, and has recently expanded into Idaho and eastern Washington, with offices in Meridian and Coeur d'Alene, and is in search of potential partners to wage war on tyranny with. That's right. They can do any commercial project from $0 to $80 million. Some of their past projects include retail, office buildings, schools, colleges, sustainable construction, and industrial facilities. To learn more about Bobo Construction, Inc., visit them at www.boboconstructioninc.com. That's all one word. You can also contact Austin Bobo directly at bobo@boboconstructioninc.com. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
Welcome back to Cross Politic on the one and only Fight Laugh Feast Network. We are grateful to have with us on the line right now Pastor Sansanich. He is the pastor of Rivne Biblical Church. It's a member of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, the same denomination that Christ Church is a part of here in Moscow, in Rivne, Ukraine. Pastor Sansanich, it's so good to see your face. Welcome back to Cross Politic.
Thank you for having me, for inviting me.
You were actually on Cross Politic like 5 years ago.
In studio.
2016.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
It's one of your
very painful memory. Yeah, I remember that.
I'm just so happy that you decided to endure that pain again. It's okay.
Only from the safe distance of his home in Ukraine.
Yeah,
is it safe? Yeah. He's more safe in Ukraine. Oh man.
When we had you on the show, Sansanich, back in 2016, this was of course in the middle of presidential elections here in the United States, and you are very, very adamant, urging people to vote for Trump.
We hadn't made up our mind yet.
Yeah, here on the show, we were still discussing whether or not we could, sort of swallow whatever and
vote for Trump.
If we wanted chemo or not.
Yeah, and you and actually Pastor Bubu Yarmolek from Poland were on the show together, and you both said you have to vote for Trump. Why did you say that? And is what is happening now in Ukraine in 2022 part of what you feared?
So I think it will be better for the United States, for the people of the United States, and for the whole world if Trump will be president again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that time, yes, I insist. So it will be better because I think so. We should have more reasonable people who trust the Lord, who has the values and who stay firm with their values, who not just goes by any wind, but just has a certain course in their political career or just in their life.
What does a Trump or Republican administration mean to the relationship between Ukraine and Russia?
Oh, there are just kind of varieties of the different views. I still think so. If Trump will be in the Oval Office, we wouldn't have this mess now in Ukraine with Russians.
Why do you say that? What about Trump's administration would have prevented this crisis?
First of all, this crisis took place a long time ago when Obama was in office, and when Obama just drew these red lines and Putin crossed these lines, and Obama just said, "Oh, okay, so we will draw a new one."
Right.
And it just kind of give this idea or give this sense or taste for the Putin, so he can do whatever he wants because West is weak. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of 3 languages now.
Yes.
And because of that, I think Putin took more and more power. And then when Trump was in office, he was firm. First time when there just a huge hideous crimes in Syria, he made a firm decision to shoot the cruise missiles to the Syria and just give Assad a very clear sign.
Yeah.
So this is a red line which wouldn't move.
Yeah.
What is going on right now in your city? Have you guys been bombed? Has there been any acts of war in your city?
So we had this morning 2 rockets shelling onto the airfield.
Okay.
Airstrike. But we are in the west part of the country, west-north, and so far the Russians, they are not interested in taking this place. Yeah. So it looks like they have these 2 main goals, and they failed badly. They try to have this blitzkrieg. You know this word blitzkrieg? It's a German.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I think so. He thought so. He will finish in one day.
Yeah.
And two main goals, which he clearly communicated, he stated. So he will change the government in Kiev, and he will have a fresh water supply to the Crimea.
So for Blitzkrieg, a lot of people don't know what that is, but that was what Hitler used, was a type of attack.
Lightning warfare.
Yeah, lightning warfare. You hit and you don't stop hitting, and you hit really hard and quick to the point that people don't know what to do, and so then they just quit and run.
Right. How is the Ukrainian military holding up?
So, even we are kind of less weaponized and maybe has a older or weaker weapons, but the Ukrainian soldiers, they just show the tremendous courage and the skill to fight.
Yeah.
So far on today, it's more than 80 tanks, 10 airplanes, 7 helicopters, and 580 how we call this vehicles, armed vehicles.
Yeah.
Military armed vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah, and 2,800 of the casualties of the Russian army.
All of those are they're Russian tanks and Russian armed vehicles that have been taken out.
Yes.
Okay.
For 2 days.
Now, I haven't been hearing that. That's really interesting. That's been something that has not been at least reported or making its way over here. Right now, it sounds like that Ukraine is just
buckling.
Yeah, they're buckling and they're kind of collapsing, and they need lots of help right now. And Russia's just pushing through wherever they want to.
No.
Wow.
They're just still struggling to get the capital of Ukraine, Kiev.
Yes.
They're trying really hard. So they more successfully, they were in the south. They took this southern city, which kind of has all this equipment for the channel, which supplied many years ago before they took Crimea, occupied Crimea. So that was a fresh water supply to the Crimea Peninsula. Yeah. But since it was annexed or occupied in 2014, Ukrainians shut down this channel. Yeah. So, and it's all the south of Ukraine, nearby this Crimea Peninsula, which has all this equipment, and so they were successful. All the might goes there, and all the might goes to the Kiev.
Okay. So, do the people of Russia want to be in war with you guys, or is this just largely a Putin war, and the people of Russia want peace with you?
I don't want to sound very offensive, but the Muscovites, it's how we call these people. They just live in the post-imperialistic trauma. They lost empire, Soviet Union, and since Putin get to the power, he just pumped up these feelings. So we were humiliated. Western kind of offend us. Now we kind of stood on knees, but now we will get more and more military power, and we will kind of get back Russia into the world scene, and we will be superpower. And everybody should consider our existence and kind of have us in mind in every negotiations.
Yeah.
So and most of people in Russia, they swallow this propaganda. So it's kind of seriously it's a funny the propaganda tell about Ukraine. So we have a fascist government. So it's a kind of a fascist country now. But it's a joke. It's a joke. So biggest part of my life, unfortunately, I live in Russia, and Russian is my mother tongue.
Wow.
My wife, she's a Russian citizen, and she speaks Russian.
Yeah.
And me too. So we talk in Russian with the people here in the Western Ukraine. And so since 23 years we are here, and nobody rebuked us for this. I didn't meet personally any accident because of Russian language or Russian citizenship of my wife. Nothing like that. There were no persecutions for the Russian language at all. it's all propaganda. But in Russia, it's communicated this way. So they humiliate Russians, they kill Russians. So again, it's kind of a famous joke, but it wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
They said, so Ukrainians, they eat Russian babies.
Oh, man.
And it was said in the prime time in the Russian news.
Wow. That sounds like our media here.
Right. Yeah. It's all.
We don't tear babies apart here, all this stuff.
So, Pastor, help me with something, because I think everybody's watching what between Russia and Ukraine right now and wondering what that landscape is going to look for the rest of the world. They're having echoes of World War II now becoming the realities. I heard even some of the world leaders saying, hey, we thought we left these type of wars, in the dustpan of history. If Russia takes Ukraine, what does that look like for the rest of the world? Does that have a stirring pot for something else to happen after that?
Yes, of course. The so-called Baltic republics and Poland, they will be the next target.
Ooh, wow.
So he will be expanding their empire.
So is it your consensus that what right now NATO or whoever, all the other nations need to make sure that Ukraine does not get taken over by Russia, because this is the beginning of something much bigger than just Russia taking over Ukraine?
Yes, but I have kind of sympathy for the NATO or for the West leaders. If West leaders were Churchill, Ukraine will play a role of Poland in the beginning of the Second World War.
Right.
So it's very easily, I think, because this madman, Mr. Putin, he said so he will, if somebody will try to stop him, he will use all means, and people in the West will see such scale of destruction they can't imagine, and they never saw in history, which is obviously he just threat with all these nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So we got 2 CREC churches in Russia. Oleg's church and then Turban Kirill's church, if I'm saying those names rightly. Have you talked to Oleg since the war has started, or what do you think Oleg and our Russian churches think about what's going on?
I had a chance to talk with Oleg Volkov. He's a pastor from St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
And it's hard for him, but again, it's just kind of obvious who is a aggressor and who is a victim.
Yeah.
And I just remind you, so the war started here in Ukraine 8 years ago, in 2014.
Yeah.
It just became to this openly horrible now.
Right.
But it was kind of this kind of war of the First World War, in a trench war. And all this war happened in the east of my country, in the occupied Luhansk and Donetsk area.
Yeah.
All these 8 years. So I had talked with Oleg, and we are brothers, we are Christians.
Yes.
And in spite of our different citizenship, so we're still brothers and love each other. So even we may have some different points of view on what's going on, in general, we agree.
Yeah. So Sarich, tell us about the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He's,
Well, you said that pretty good.
I'm trying to do my best. Ukrainian accent. What is your view of him? How is he handling this?
It's kind of a agreement now in Ukraine. Don't criticize our president.
You're right.
Yeah. So because we are at war.
Yes.
I think so. He's getting in the office because of his popularity as a actor, other comedian.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we heard.
Yeah. So, and the Ukrainians has such a small regard toward the government and the authority. So we allow to choose in office the clown or comedian.
Well, we elected Trump.
And then Biden.
No. It's completely different stories. Trump and Zelensky, different people, different worldview.
Okay.
Wow.
No, so and Zelensky now, I think so. In these circumstances, he is forced to be very much pro-Ukrainian, very much for Ukraine, and in this open war now, he's doing a good job. Somebody writing him speech, and he's reading that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's feeling that, but he's reading that.
That's not bad.
So
we were talking about
that. Yeah. So I want to know what is your view on Biden then? He's not your president, so you can criticize him.
All you want.
No, please. He's old, senile man. You should have some respect, to the kind of age of this man. So,
wow.
I think so. His role in this crisis is hard to underestimate, as Bush said. I like this.
Underestimate?
Yes.
So then, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Biden, I think he tried to cover his own misdoing or mistakes which happened during his presidency, and because of that, he used this rhetoric about Ukraine and how he supports Ukraine, etc. But again, Putin is really clever guy, and he works in KGB after all, and when he started this invasion, and Biden, who promised this sanctions from hell, now he's pedaling back.
Yeah.
No SWIFT disconnection from the SWIFT.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No ban on the oil and gas.
Right.
No embargo.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Because it will hit. I agree with that. So Westerners will suffer because of that. Western Europe and America, North America. But still, if you have values, if you said so you support these people and you really support democracy and freedom.
Yeah.
So then you should pay something for that. Like one priest said, if you have convictions, you should be ready to die for that. If you are not ready to die for your convictions, it means you don't have any convictions.
That's right.
That's good.
That's right.
Sansanich, I know your son is down in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk.
Yes.
I remember visiting that city with you several years ago. I know Ivano-Frankivsk has been bombed. There have been missiles landing there. How is your son, and how are the Christians doing there?
Yeah, again, this was mainly rocket shelling to the airports.
Okay.
And military objects. So, of course, some civilian infrastructure were damaged, but not so badly.
Okay.
What is it like to be a pastor in this moment in Ukraine? Are people desperately looking for answers? They're facing one of the biggest probably fears of their lives, a war. What's it been like these last couple days being a pastor?
Yeah, but what do you preach on Sunday?
Yeah.
We use the lectionary in our church.
Okay.
And the sermon should be this passage from the Matthew about Martha and Maria.
Yeah. Okay.
So now it's a little bit headache how to turn it to the context of what we are feeling now.
Maybe sometimes the Spirit moves you to a different path.
So before we let you go, just quickly, how do we pray for you guys out there?
So certainly, pray for Volodymyr Mikita. He's a pastor in Nikolaev. Nikolaev, it's a city in the south.
Okay.
And all the cities in the south nearby Nikolaev already occupied, and they're just heavily, seriously damaged by this invasion. Mykolaiv now encircled. from the land, and the Russians control the Black Sea, so they have a lot of ships there. So and they will try to do this. So Volodya Mikita, he is serving there as a pastor.
Okay.
It's a church, CRC church. So pray for our soldiers, for those who are fighting, and praying for the mothers who already lost their sons. And there are some casualties among civilians, including children.
Mm-hmm.
So the son of pastor who served in Dunaevцы, it's in the center of the Ukraine, Khmelnytsky area. So his son is a grown young man, officer in the board officer. And so he was exactly serving there in this Kherson area where there were such a furious fighting.
Yeah.
So please pray for Sasha Pavlyuk. His name is Sasha Pavlyuk, and his son is Mark. His son is named Mark. Pray for him and for encouragement for Sasha and his wife Irina. Pray so we can serve people, and just God give us strength and wisdom to serve people really well, and just give them decisions which will help them. Because now it's sometimes this advice it's real crucial. So it's about life and death.
Right.
Like, should I evacuate my family and my vulnerable, which means wife and children, or not?
Yep.
Should I join this? We have this local battalion from civilian who try to protect the cities.
Yeah.
Should I join it or not? And things like that. So, and it's exhausting because you live in the war. The people call and it's just shelling, and some were killed. And of course, you kind of involved in this, and you hear in the news and you see these distractions and just dead bodies. This is not easy. Let me say it the least. So I don't know how, but just pray so we will hold our independence.
Yes.
And to be an independent country with our own sovereignty and own will, and so we can move forward to the Europe, to the Western civilized world, far away from Russia, if we can.
No,
yeah,
brother.
but it looks like it's difficult. Yes, so you want to ask something?
We will pray.
Yes, sir.
We will pray.
Christian, you have your prayer list in front of you. Get to praying.
Pastor Sansanich,
Thank you, Pastor. We're
appreciate
praying
you,
for
brother.
you, man.
We are praying for you.
More cross politic coming up next. Peter Hitchens, we're going to top it off with him. Oh boy, get on your knees. It's time. This is Cross Politic.
Hey, it's Garrison again. I hope you're enjoying the show thus far. Please, please pray for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine and Russia. It's important for us to remember that we serve a sovereign king. Psalm 10, 17, and 18 says, Lord, you have heard the desire of the humble. You will prepare their heart. You will cause your ear to hear, to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may oppress no more. As we partner with them in prayer, we'd also like to thank our partners, Dime Payments. Dime Payments is a Christian-owned processing payment business. Every business needs a payment process system, especially in this world where tyrants are trying to shut us down and shut us up. So please go to dimepayments.com/FLF and sign your business up. Working with them supports us, and they won't cancel you. Once again, go to dimepayments.com/FLF. Thanks again for watching, and Lord bless.
All right, so Blake Sanich.
Yep. A Russian, no, actually a Texas Russian, a Ukrainian, and now a Brit.
There we go.
To sort us all out. Welcome back to Cross Politic on the one and only Fight Laugh Feast Network. We're very grateful to have with us right now for just a few minutes Mr. Peter Jonathan Hitchens. He's an English journalist and author. Hitchens writes for The Mail on Sundays, a former foreign correspondent in Moscow, Russia, Washington, D.C. He's contributed to The Spectator, The American Conservative, The Guardian, First Things, Prospect, The New Statesman, and he's been on Cross Politic before.
Multiple times.
Yeah, so, he regrets it every time.
Thank you for coming back on Cross Politic, Peter.
So far, so good.
He's kind of like our foreign correspondent, you know?
I don't know how he feels about that. Peter, what is the responsibility of the West in this Russian-Ukrainian crisis? What have we done to cause this? Have we done something to cause it? And is there anything that we can do to fix it?
Well, let's not say cause, but certainly I think that certain actions and behaviors have created the conditions in which it's happened. I think we have to be careful. Anybody must condemn aggressive war, as I did over Iraq and indeed in Kosovo and in Libya and in Afghanistan. I think the countries should stay out of other countries, and for Russia to go into Ukraine is unconscionable and unforgivable, and that's something I'm not at all seeking to justify or apologize for. But what I would say is that I do think this could have been avoided if a more sensible Russia policy had been adopted, particularly by the United States, but also by several of the other NATO countries in the last 30 years. And the best guide to all this is George Kennan, who, as you probably know, was the architect of the United States policy towards the Soviet Union in his great long telegram of containment, who came out of retirement in the 1990s to condemn the policy which Bill Clinton, fancy it being him, was pursuing of NATO expansion. He said that it would, amongst other things, it's probably the most important thing he said, it was insulting to the Democrats and the people who believed in freedom in Russia, who had defeated peacefully a terrible regime and were suddenly being treated as if they were enemies again. And he said that it would, in the long term, create a new Cold War. And he's been proved absolutely right. I think that his prediction was correct. I don't quite know what the motives have been of those people who pursued this expansion of NATO, and in many cases have actually called for a new Cold War. But something of the kind has been going on now really for 30 years, and it's brought us to this point.
Wow. So what specifically has been the flashpoint in the last couple of weeks, month, days? What's been this flashpoint that's got us to this point?
I don't know. I was surprised. I think a lot of people were surprised that President Putin actually attacked Ukraine. I think a lot of people shouted about it, but they didn't think he would, and I certainly didn't. And I was shocked. And my only conclusion is that he must have gone mad. So I don't know. Well, it is. I mean, it's a crazy thing to do in the post-1945 world. Invading another country is waging aggressive war, which is illegal under international law, and you just can't do it unless you're the United States, which seems to have special dispensation on this.
Ouch.
But it will always cause trouble. How is Russia going to hold down Ukraine, which is full of people who don't want to be ruled by Russia? Does it have the strength, the power to do so? I shouldn't think so. It's fairly likely that outside forces will intervene to make sure that Ukraine doesn't now become a peaceful place. I would have thought it was a very dangerous thing to have done from the simple practical point of view, and I suspect it will eventually bring Putin down. So I don't know, but I think the trigger for it, the one which most people didn't notice, was a fascinating event in 2014 when the Ukrainian government of Viktor Yanukovych was overthrown by what I've always referred to as a mob putsch. I find it fascinating that so many people, in my view, again, rightly disapprove of the extraordinary Trumpoid attack on the Capitol building. But exactly the same people are incredibly keen on an event remarkably similar to that, where what was to say a violent mob, openly backed by foreign politicians, actually overthrew the legitimate. It wasn't a very nice government, but it was a legitimate government of Ukraine, and produced an unconstitutional overthrow. And it was at that point, I think, that Russia decided that it was thus far and no further. That was when they annexed Crimea. Yeah. and also when they more or less created these sore points, these two alleged statelets on the edge of Ukraine, which, of course, as long as they're there, they pretty much prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, because you can't join NATO if you've got a live conflict on your territory. That, I think a lot of people thought was far enough, but then I don't know. I think there's something was going on in diplomacy when all that shouting was going on Western media about how Putin is going to invade, I'm not sure that at the beginning of this he was going to invade. But I think he may well have become convinced during the past few weeks that Western diplomats were not serious about looking for a way out. And there was a way out. It was a difficult way out, a complicated way out, but a possible one, the Minsk II agreement, which would have effectively turned Ukraine into a federal country. It's been around for ages, but that's come to an end now. That's all been killed by this attack. So I don't know, but maybe he felt that how shall I put it, the rather high voltage form of Western diplomacy to which Russia was subjected, with leader after leader coming to Moscow and by and large berating him, meant that there was no hope of any such compromise. So he might as well act in the way that he has. And to say, I regard that as a mistake as well as a crime. And as we all know from Talleyrand, I think it is a mistake is worse than a crime.
So run this out for me. What do all these sanctions mean, and how do you think this war is going to end?
So the first question I got, and the second one.
What do these sanctions mean, and how do you think this war is going to play out and come to an end?
Well, sanctions generally don't. They don't. I gathered this evening that Russia was now being expelled from the Eurovision Song Contest. I really don't think that's going to have a huge impact upon Kremlin policy. Sanctions are generally, even if they're targeted, they generally end up hurting poor and powerless people. The rich and powerful can always evade them. And I remember seeing the effects of sanctions both in Iraq and Iran on normal middle-class people of the type we should be trying to get on our side. And I've always thought they were disastrous. So they're just a pretense to doing something when no military action is either contemplated or possible. How will it go? I don't know. And this is another thing. I mean, I'm not sure how good the Russian army really is. I'm not sure how tough the Ukrainian defenders are or how good their equipment is. It could be that they might. I haven't heard any news for a couple of hours as I've been traveling, but it could be that the Ukrainian army actually managed to slow down the Russian attack quite considerably, or in other ways hamper it in ways that are embarrassing to the Russians and which make them look foolish. I simply don't know.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons for not launching aggressive war is you never know how it will go. It's like summoning demons up from the ground. You simply don't know how it will go, and you can't get them to go back once you've started. Wow. That's why I'm so against it. It's war is hell, and aggressive war is especially hell for those people who start it.
Yeah, so one question here. Right now, if President Biden pulls you in and says, Peter, what do we do right now to try and solve this thing? What do you tell him to do? Because
we know the prime minister is not pulling you in.
No, he certainly isn't. No, I don't know whether there's anything that could now be done. A line has been crossed, but I doubt very much that any of the principles in this could achieve anything. It would need to be the United Nations who could find perhaps some way of reviving some sort of compromise. But it would also involve pulling in the Ukrainians and saying, look, we have been, as they have been, using it as a battering ram for some years. And we now think this has obviously ended in tragedy. So perhaps we might try another policy, but you would have to agree to it. And because the Ukrainian government is still very much dominated by ethnic nationalists who are very passionately anti-Russian in many cases, it'd be quite a hard job to persuade them to do that, because the ultimate compromise has to involve some sort of special treatment for the Russian minority in Ukraine, because that people don't understand just how serious that's been. Russians and Ukrainians and indeed people who are sort of halfway between the two live, for the most part, very harmoniously in Ukraine. There are many Russian speakers in Ukraine who are happy and loyal Ukrainian citizens. It's not a straightforward split between a majority and a minority. And I think the majority population in most Ukrainian cities is Russian speaking. That doesn't mean they all want to live in Russia. But if the Ukrainian state, as it does, treats Russian as a second-class language, as it does, and teaches children in schools a version of history which is quite anti-Russian, as far as I know. It certainly was a few years ago, last time I checked, and also promotes this rather unpleasant character called Stepan Bandera, who was the leader of Ukrainian nationalism at the end of the 1930s and 1940s, who's regarded by most Russians as a fascist bandit. I think it just divides the country. So unless someone can persuade the Ukrainians that it isn't actually going to end up the way they hoped, I'm not sure what can be done. And their hopes have been raised enormously by the encouragement, particularly what I regard as the very foolish act in 2008 of the NATO conference in Bucharest, offering Ukraine and Georgia eventual NATO membership. And they did this, and this is the absolutely fascinating part, they did this a year after Putin had made his famous speech in Munich, in which he warned against exactly such a policy. And I have to say, looking like, well, if there was any clearer way of saying, we don't care what you think, Buster, do what you like, then I don't know what it is. And I think that has now come home.
Wow.
And I think that if you were looking for a real cause of the deep resentment which has been evinced in the past few days, and the stupid rage which it's engendered, then I think that decision to offer Ukraine NATO membership in 2008 may be it.
Peter Hitchens.
Peter Hitchens, thank you, sir.
Man.
Thank you for taking the time out to do this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Very nice to talk to you.
Love that beard.
My regards to Moscow, Idaho.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. God bless. Man, so what now?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he said he's not sure there's much that can be done at the, Biden brings you into the office, and that was Peter's response was, I'm not sure much can be done at this point.
Right.
It's we've crossed a line.
Yeah.
In other words, this is war. There's no way backing out of this, unless actually Putin repents and stops bringing his troops in. It's like nothing. We're here.
So the last thing that I heard that Putin had agreed to some form of talks.
Right.
And he's going to go send a representative to Ukraine. Was it Ukraine? I believe it was.
I think maybe actually up in the neighboring
I doubt
country.
they fly him into Ukraine.
Well, they don't have to. He's already there.
Belarus. I think they were up in Belarus.
And so that's going to be interesting to see what that turns into. And I know it's not completely a ceasefire because I still get alerts that there's explosions happening on my,
Newsfeed.
Talking to Sensenich, it got heavy, man.
Yeah, it did.
We started talking about praying.
Yeah.
Pray for all these people.
Yeah.
He was naming names and
And there's we saw the mayor in Kiev that said, we're going to have to go out and
he's going to fight.
Take up arms. He's going to fight.
Former boxer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heavyweight.
Yeah.
And part of it, I think I heard Gabe say this, it'd be nice if we had mayors like that on our side of things.
Like what mayors in Texas or in Idaho would do that.
The truth is that our mayors haven't been tried that hard yet. They've been tried with small stuff and they failed.
Yeah, they did.
I would like to believe that if they were tried with something that hard, they would actually stand up. But if they're going to capitulate to mass mandates and regulations from the CDC instead of being able to care for their own people, remember we had I'm missing his name right now, but Pastor. I see his face. I can't think of his name.
What state or country?
But I believe he's in Iowa. But he said, "Hey, I marry these people." Kerry Gordon.
Yeah, Kerry.
I marry these people. I bury these people. I'm the one who's going to decide whether or not we have church.
Yeah.
And he's ruling.
Don't tell me I don't take care of my people.
Right. Exactly. And you want a mayor that's thinking the same way. Wait a second.
Right.
I'm the one who has the authority of these borders here.
They elected me.
To
protect them.
And so I'm going to do that very thing.
Right.
And so it's encouraging to see that. The thing that I keep going back to is that we don't have, as Christians, we have let foreign policy escape us.
Yeah.
We don't have a good concept of law at all either, period.
Right.
But it really is coming into effect when we vote presidentially. We don't, I'm just thinking about the top first. We don't think about the implications of that president as it relates to other nations. So Peter Hammond. Right. Peter Hammond is a theonomist who has served over in Africa. He's just a missionary. He's been on the ground. You'll see him taking pictures with his AR-15 or AK-47 while he's preaching the gospel with his Bible, you know. And he's like, when Reagan got elected and he sent the troops in and bombed, he's like, we were on the ground praising God that he had answered prayers, that he became president.
Yeah.
And we were sitting over here at our own concerns about whether or not we wanted Reagan or not, or this or that, or more taxes so we can help the poor. And they're sitting over there getting killed by militia, praying that Reagan was elected. And I hear the same thing, you know, when we talk to Sansanich and Pastor Boo Boo, like they're saying, listen, you have no idea that the election of Trump has implications internationally beyond.
Right.
And so we don't have a foreign concept of theological concept.
I don't think we understand. I mean, maybe my big takeaway here is like this, and this is a big part of the mission of Cross Politic, is like, I don't think the Christian church understands how the gospel impacts everything.
Everything.
Like if Jesus is Lord of heaven and earth, then it impacts everything. And I mean, we were talking about this with Blake at the beginning of the show. The promises of the swords and the spears being beaten into plowshares and pruning hooks. I mean, the promise of peace comes from the gospel.
That's right.
And Christians, I mean, we can go to church and then you just frequently leave the gospel at the door. And if anything is, maybe it applies to their marriage. Maybe it applies to their child rearing. But you ask a Christian cop, how does the gospel impact your law enforcement?
That's right.
Ask a Christian sheriff, how does the gospel impact? And apart from
and then put yourself on the front Canadian lines there and ask that question.
Well, exactly. I mean, apart from a few platitudes like, well, I believe in God and love your neighbor, or, I try to be nice to people, I try to tell the truth, or whatever. Right. Like, I mean, okay, great, fine. But how does it impact?
Yeah.
What does biblical justice look like?
Yes.
In your job, and particularly, what happens when there's conflict with other authorities?
Right.
The concept of lesser magistrates, their job to protect from incursions and invasions from other magistrates seeking to. I mean, we've had 2 years of testing, and we pretty much failed.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, we pretty much failed with a few little exceptions here and there, with a sheriff here or a mayor here saying we ain't doing that. City council here or there saying, no, you can't do that to us. But I don't think, and one of the things that Sansanich said was he mentioned a conviction is something you're worth dying for.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to hear Pastor Doug at our Liberty Tour talk in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
When I asked him about what he wanted to talk about, he said that the thing that he wanted to talk about is what makes a person willing to say, "Give me liberty" or "Give me death."
Yeah.
Yeah.
What and then and the opposite of that, the willingness to just give it away because you're afraid.
What makes it Patrick Henry or LeBron James?
Oh man, But the fundamental answer is the gospel.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the gospel is what turns it all around. The gospel is what allows you to see that if Christ is king, then I must serve him. And Christ doesn't say, "Don't worry, I'll make it all easy for you."
No,
he says, "Take up your cross and follow me."
Well, and that's what Blake was talking about. That's what I really wanted to hit this. We forgot that as America, our biggest part is that we look to bring democracy around the world, whatever that means.
Gay marriage.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a problem. But they do understand. We are understanding one thing. We are understanding that it matters in one way or another what happens in other nations. I think that's important. But if we really believe the impact of that, then the best thing that we could ever do is to send missionaries to other nations,
right?
And to not impede that, because what Blake was talking about as far as Ukraine having that kind of liberty developed there, that's not an accident.
Right.
The church has been really focused on gospel ministry in Ukraine really hard,
right,
and at a very young level. So for years.
And that's bleeding into Russia.
And it's bleeding into Russia. Now, Russia is want to merge it all into everything, but we know the gospel's messy, so we know how it works, right? It gets in there and it just starts messing up the way but a form of Christian humanism begins to develop there. And if we were smart, we would supply missionaries as America to every small little country and even larger. And what he said, spend time in the places that aren't appealing, because that is going to be the ultimate change at the end of the day.
Right.
That brings transformation.
Right.
That's how look, we are to make disciples, baptizing and teaching them to obey everything God has commanded.
Right.
The best way to detour war and a lot of these other things is to start planting churches in places where we have massive problems.
Again, the point is the gospel impacts everything.
But if we don't understand the gospel impact here in America and how it applies to our civil magistrate and to our local government, then what we're planting is basically an overturn, another form of revolution that doesn't happen from the gospel.
Right. No. We already have. We've got a Soviet Trudeau. Right.
Yep.
We've got. The whole West has been acting like Soviets for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
With our mask mandates and our medical mandates and our vaccine.
We have our laws, but we haven't been listening to them.
No, absolutely. And just declaring emergency powers and emergency states and so on is. That's the way of the Soviets. That's the way of paganism. That's not. And thank God there is still. Nevertheless, with all that said, there is still such a strong gospel presence. In the West. It's fading. It's been growing weak, but I believe that God has given us all of this on purpose.
Absolutely.
He is spanking us. He has given us discipline, and he's saying, wake up. And Christians are waking up. Christians are waking up and saying something's not right. Something's not right. Why are our kids after generation turning in, leaving the faith, leaving the church? Why? Well, maybe it's because we keep sending them to government schools, to secular schools, to anti-Christ schools. I don't know, where'd we get the government education idea from anyway? I think it was Karl Marx.
Right.
Is there an accident there? No. And now I think we're waking up. Since when did we know the names of our mayors and our city councils and our governors and our attorney generals? And I think God is waking us up and saying, look, all of this is mine. Are you with me or not? All of this is mine. Are you with me or not? And in Christ, that's the only solution. The political offers, are fundamentally materialistic. Money, land, all this kind of stuff. And sure, you can play with that, and it has it factors in. But fundamentally, it's a spiritual issue. Back to the beginning, who does this? Who invades a country, starts bombing people where innocent civilians are going to be killed? That's Satan.
That's right. That's what Blake was saying.
That's what Blake was saying.
It's satanic. And you can't fight Satan with sanctions.
That's right. That's right.
With natural gas sanctions.
No, you need the gospel. You need Christ. And Christ is the one who reconciles all things. He's the one who can take all of these things, your family loyalties, your marriage loyalties, your national loyalties,
country
your
loyalties,
ethnic loyalties.
right.
He takes it all. And it gets crucified.
Yes, right.
And then he gets raised from the dead.
Yep.
And he puts it back together and says, here's how to love your neighbor as yourself. Here's how to love your nation. Here's how to be a patriot. And here's how to love the nations of the world. Christ is going to take it all. It's a global vision.
That's right.
But it's Christ is going to take it, not the United Nations, not NATO, not some kind of humanistic solution. It's going to be Christ. And he's going to do it in such a way that we know it's him.
That's right. Yeah, nobody's going to get this victory.
No,
it all belongs to him.
It's going to be messy because Christ is the one seated on the throne.
I've known Sansanich since about 2008, and every time I've met him, it's just like the joy on him. He's in this Ukrainian country. It's very difficult. And then seeing him just now, where his country's under attack, and seeing just the joy that's in Sansanich. There's no fear.
He's already died.
Amen.
That's right.
When you're in Christ, you've already died. Your life is hidden with God in Christ, and you're not afraid of anything anymore.
Gabe doesn't know what this means. He just talks right over.
Neither do I.
Hey, be praying for our brothers out there in Russia and shut your mic off. In Ukraine, they need it right now. So, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
When tyrants take over, what's the first thing they do? Disarm. It happened in Russia, China, Germany, and most recently, Afghanistan. Why? Because disarmed people are easier to control. And over the last century and a half, American tyrants have been carrying out a slow, methodical disarmament that no one is talking about. State education. Tyrants know that education is warfare. Our rulers have a vested interest in making you totally harmless. They've got big plans and they don't want you getting in the way. Think about it. Would you rather fight an army decked out with high-powered rifles or a bunch of dinky water pistols? They know that if you can think critically, you're a threat. At New St. Andrews College, we want to graduate men and women who are dangerous. Dangerous to the world, dangerous to the principalities and powers, dangerous to spiritual wickedness in high places. Education can either arm you or disarm you. It can make you a threat or make you a useful idiot. So, where you get that education counts. Click the link to apply to New St. Andrews College today.